So the man of the hour is the Ramban. And we've learned many times Ramban together. As a result of my teaching Ramban in Canada, I teach Ramban here. I started this about a month ago, once a week at night here in Neve Shamir, which is Ramat Beit Shemesh. And it's going very well. Very exciting,
Are
Ramban.
you putting it online? I don't see it. Are you putting it
I
on?
have to take care of that. It's Eschatayni Masker. It's just that extra couple of minutes of work, um, but you should find at least some of them that I definitely already put online, but I haven't been very meticulous about it. So today we want to study the Ramban's understanding of Kiddush, and that's the Ramban in Parshas Yisro in the Aseres Hadibros, which would be Shmos Perek Chaf Pasuk Ches Zochros Yom HaShabbos Lekadsho. Now, I have to tell you this. This is a whopper of a Ramban. Just in terms of the size, it's pages upon pages. And the Ramban actually changes his whole approach in the middle. He just finds a mechilta and uh, and he goes off on a different mahal. Now, let me say, I'm going to start with the end and move backwards. The goal here is to show that according to the Ramban, in that pasuk, Zocher es Yom HaShabbos Lekadsho, 5 words, correct? One, two, three, four, five. There are two different mitzvahs. There's Zocher, and then there's Lekadsho. That itself is a pella. Now, if you had the Ramban and you wanted to highlight, like Roman numeral number one is his first presentation, and then you wanted to highlight at what point does he change his mind, Roman numeral number two, so then you would underline the words Avol lirabosenu od bo medrash, which again is not going to mean much to you now because you don't have it in front of you. But I don't know if anybody here has, by chance in a million, has access to the Moser of Cook Ramban. I can just tell you it's on page Tuf Aleph. That's where he makes the shift with the word Avol. So the word Avol is a key word here. Now, if you want to underline the first approach, it would be V'al derech hapshat. So again, these are different words in this very long Ramban that should be bolded so that the eye could see where we have the first pshat in the Ramban and the second pshat in the Ramban. Now, I'm hoping you'll give me a knee-jerk response that I'm looking for to the question based on all that we've been discussing until now. When is the mitzvah of Zocher es Yom HaShabbos Lekadsho chal? When? What's the point in time that generates the mitzvah of Zocher es Yom HaShabbos Lekadsho? What would be your knee-jerk response based on everything we've been learning until now?
Days?
When?
Says Cotton?
Speaker drop louder.
Sorry, Says Cotton, Friday night.
Friday night. Friday night. Comes along the Taz. I'm sorry, sorry. My head is in the Taz. Comes along the Ramban, and he says, no. The mitzvah of Zochres Yom HaShabbos Lekadsho does not emerge with Friday night, meaning with Knisat HaShabbat, as we'd say in modern Hebrew. And the Ramban's language, he says, Zichron Tamid The word tamid means a constant, perpetual mitzvah of zikaron. And again, just shooting off, by pure association, if you take a look at the first Bir Halacha, the Mishnah Brura in Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim, Aleph Aleph, he quotes the Sefer HaChinuch that there are 6 mitzvos that are tamid. There's Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem and the idea of V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. There are 6 constant mitzvahs. I believe, and you can quote me on this, that according to the Ramban, there are 7. Because the mitzvah of zikaron, with regard to Shabbos, according to Ramban, is tamid, which basically means that there's not a moment in time which is excluded from this kiyum mitzvah. You can fulfill this mitzvah at any time. Tamid. The Ramban gives a kind of philosophical explanation as to why this mitzvah is so unique that it's tamid. We understand, Avos Hashem and Yiras Hashem and, the sanctity of God's name. But why Shabbos? Why Zikron Tamid? So that's going to be a philosophical presentation, which maybe we'll leave, if not for today, for another time. Be'al derech hapshat. Okay, so this is what I call Roman numeral number 1. Sheyehei mitzvah shenizkar tamid bechol yom es haShabbos. Tamid bechol yom. So I would translate the word zachar, according to the Ramban, as awareness. We should have a constant, perpetual, non-stop awareness of Shabbos. B'chol yom. Shelo nishkacheu, we should never forget about the Shabbos. V'lo yischalef lonu b'shara yomim, which I would translate the following: we should not equate this day with any other day of the week, meaning this is a unique day that separates itself from the other days of the week. And then again, what I mentioned beremez before, the philosophical background here, ki bizichronenu also, by remembering it or being aware of it, tamid, yizkar masa bereshis b'choles. A constant awareness of God as creator. So the Ramban has now the following equation: Shabbos equals creation. And the goal of Zachar Yom HaShabbos L'Kadsho is a constant awareness of God as creator. The Ramban says, Zeu Ikar Gadol Be'emunas Hakel. And he goes on and on. We'll get back to this, but not today. Why is the belief in the creation so fundamental? If I want to be argumentative, what's so bad, what's so terrible if chas v'shalom I deny that God created the world? And that's an entire discussion in the Ramban.
We read in Shacharit, Hu mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh bereshit.
Right. So why is this so fundamental? Something very unique here about the Ramban's approach and his understanding that the fundamental basis for all of our Amunah, whether it's the Amunah in God as the all-powerful, God as infinite, God as awareness, providence of our actions, God of Schar V'Onesh, God who gives prophecy to Nevi'im. All that depends upon Maisa Bereshis. Again, that's, as I said before, that's a long discussion, not for now. Vitam Lekadsho. So the first part of the pasuk, Zocher es Yom HaShabbos, generates an obligation to be aware of the Shabbos the entire week. And we'll see what that means in practicality. And now the Ramban has to go ahead and explain what is Lekadsho. And he says, Shetehei Shvisa, Shvisa means when we rest on Shabbos and we desist from doing Melacha. Be'einenu, it should be understood in front of our eyes. Ba'avur shu Yom Kadosh. We're not just taking a day of rest. It's a good day off. But rather, it's because of the Kedushas HaShabbos. Lipanos bo mi iske machshavos v'hevle azmanim. V'loses bo oneg l'nafshenu b'darkei Hashem v'leches al hachacham v'neviim l'shmoa divrei Hashem. And the Ramban proves that on Shabbos we go to hear the rabbis. So again, according to the Ramban, there's almost, again, this is Roman numeral number 1, there's almost a direct relationship between Zachar during the entire week and Lekadsho on Shabbos. And it basically boils down to recognizing the uniqueness of Shabbos as a Yom Kadosh. Now, how do we accomplish this during the week? Zachar es Yom HaShabbos Lekadsho. Says the Ramban, Tnu Lev Lizkar Tobit es Yom HaShabbos She'im Nizdamin Lo Chelek Yofer. He has another gears on the bottom here in the footnote, Chefetz Yofer, Mazmino L'Shabbos. This could be very relevant. I don't know, in your neck of the woods, if they're already sending Mishloach Monos. It's usually like companies, that want to smear you, if you pardon the expression. Like I call it shochan, So in my wife's work, there's a lot of shochan, because she gives a lot of work to other people. So in any event, so let's say I open up my door today, and I can almost promise you that if I did that, I'd find some Mishloach Manos there that were delivered. And I see that there's a Chefetz Yafa. People send all sorts of things for Mishloach Manos. It's really crazy. It has nothing to do with the mitzvah of Mishloach Manos. Besides which, it's not the Zman mitzvah. But yesterday we received this gigantic, beautiful challah cover. What's it got to do with Purim? I don't know, but it's a good shochan. And I put it away for Shabbos. Why? Because I'm constantly the whole week long aware of Shabbos. That's called Mazmino L'Shabbos. Designates it for Shabbos. He quotes a Mechilta, Zocher es Yom HaShabbos Lekadsho, Te Zochro Bi'echad V'Shabbos. It's already on Sunday. I'm remembering Shabbos. Shen Nizdami Lo Chelik Yofa Tehei Mesakno L'Shabbos. Then he quotes a brisa, which comes from Beitza daf tezayin. Amru Olav al Shammai Azokin Kol Yoma for your Ochel Lekovit Shabbos. All week he was eating Lekovit Shabbos. Ketzad. Matzah Behema Noah. Omer Tehezu Lechvod Shabbos. L'machar Matzah Cheres Noah Hemenu. On Monday he finds a better potential piece of meat. Meiniach Hashniya. V'yochel Sarishon. He puts away the second one and he eats the first one. Lokeach Chefetz Tov. The Omer Zel Shabbos. Kli Chadash. The Omer Zel Shabbos. So you can begin to see why and how, according to the Ramban, you can fulfill this mitzvah of constant awareness of Shabbos. So far, so good. Now we get to Shabbos itself. Now on Shabbos itself, I'm eating, I'm drinking, I have all sorts of ta'anugot, delights and pleasures. I cease my work. And all this could be understood as, an enjoyable day of rest. Call it a day off. Comes along the pasuk and says, Lekacho, I command you to understand that everything that you do on Shabbos is an entirely different behavior pattern that is lekavod kedushas haShabbos, that is generated and endowed by kedusha Shabbos. And once again, I want to emphasize that it seems to me, if I'm reading the Ramban correctly and interpreting it correctly, that the Ramban sees Zachar Yom HaShabbos Lekadsho at this point as one continuous flow, meaning whether it's Zachar or it's Lekadsho, it's one chefta, it's one entity. The awareness of Shabbos as a special, unique day, and the behavior on Shabbos as a result of that unique sanctity of the day. The only difference between Zachar at the beginning of the pasuk and Lekadsho at the end of the pasuk is what day of the week are you holding. If you're in the first 6 days of the week, then you're holding by Zachar. When you get to the 7th day of the week, which is Shabbos, then you're holding by Lekadsho. But it's all the same. Because what you're doing is you're designating your activities and your objects and your behavior pattern for the Kiddush of Shabbos. And that's something, according to the Ramban, that is not limited to Shabbos, but applies the whole week long. Clear? And then we get to the word aval, which I call Roman numeral number 2. Aval l'Rabosenu, you see, until now it was al derech hapshat. And now he says aval l'Rabosenu, meaning Chazal, od bo medrash. There's a medrash. Mimilas lekadsho. Meaning now the medrash that the Ramban is quoting is going to reinterpret lekadsho. It's not the way he understood it until now, al derech hapshat, to guarantee that all my behavior that's so different on Shabbos and the rest of the week is all a result of and generated by Kedusha Shabbos, anupshat lekadsho. And in the footnote here, he says that where is this medrash? B'mechilta. Now, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag here, but my arbit, what I've been schwitzing on for the last couple of days, is to try to figure out according to the new interpretation of Lekadsho, what do we do with the pasuk Zachar es Yom HaShabbos? Meaning, are we just reinterpreting Lekadsho, but we're taking and accepting the old pshat in Zachar es Yom HaShabbos, or as a result of the new pshat in Lekadsho that we're about to unveil, we have to reinterpret Zachar es Hayom, the mitzvah of Zechira? I don't know. Let's just be open-minded about that. Says Ramban, Shenekadshehu. Lekadsho means nikadshehu. Let me translate that the best way I can translate it. We, because nikadshehu is in the plural first person. We, in Spanish we call it nosotros, right? We should be makadesh the Shabbos. We sanctify the Shabbos. I mean, again, it's not the same as the Derech HaPshat. The Derech HaPshat is that the Kiddush Shabbos is the generator of how we should behave on Shabbos and how we should focus and designate our behavior on Shabbos. All as a result of Kiddush Shabbos. But now he's saying something radically different in the name of the Mechilta, namely that we have to be Makadesh the Shabbos. Bizikaron. Now, I'm not sure, and I wish I could change the text. There are a lot of mistakes in the Ramban, but I think instead of bizikaron, I think it should read bizachira, which would mean the following: that the Ramban now is changing radically the understanding of zachar. In the first round, al derech hapshat, zachar means to remember, not to forget. In the second round, zachar means lahazkir, to enunciate, to proclaim. To declare. Oh, that's a better word. Declare today is Shabbos. Ke'inyan. Where do we find a precedent, asks the Ramban, for our proclamation of Kedusha to generate sanctity? V'kidashtem eshnas hachamishim shana. Which year are we talking about? The Yovel year, the Jubilee year, the 50th year. And the Torah says, V'kidashtem, and you will sanctify the 50th year. Sheyeh ton Kiddush, that the 50th year requires an act of Kiddush to proclaim that year as Kadosh b'Kedushas Yovel. Now, who is going to implement that act of proclaiming and generating the Kedusha? It's Bezdin, the court, the high court of Israel. Lomar means to enunciate, to proclaim. B'Yovel, on the 50th year. Mekudosh. Then when we get to the 50th year, it doesn't just pass by. In the sequence of 50 years, meaning it's the year after the 49th, right? 7 cycles of 7 Shmitos, and then automatically the 50th year is Yovel. No. That's not sufficient. The Torah requires Bezdin to go ahead and proclaim the 50th year as sanctified. And that's called Kiddush. Kiddush means sanctification. Now, again, I don't know how you feel about this, but to me, this is absolutely revolutionary. I've been making Kiddush for, I don't know, let's say since I'm Bar Mitzvah, over, almost 60 years. Okay, every Friday night I make Kiddush. Did it ever dawn upon me that I am now sanctifying the Shabbos? That I am endowing Kedusha in that seventh day of the week? I don't know about you, but I never thought of that. It never crossed my mind. And in
It's not,
fact, if somebody would have told me that when we make Kiddush on Friday night, the word Kiddush means to be Makadosh the Shabbos, I would tell him he's off his rocker. He's totally crazy. He has fulfilled the mitzvah of Adelo Yoda. Why? Because the seventh day of the week is Kadosh B'Kedusha Shabbos, whether you declare it or whether you don't declare it. As the Gemara calls it in Chulin, Kiddusha Kviya V'Kaima. It's a given Kedusha. But I think the Ramban is saying that Yovel is also Kviya V'Kaima. When the 50th year comes around, it's Kadosh, whether you like it or not. And yet, there is a legal act of Kiddush. Does that Kiddush add any Kedusha that wouldn't have existed without your Kiddush? Basically, I don't know. That's a tough question, and I don't know how to answer that question. Afkan, after presenting Yovel, so too, says the Ramban here in our Posuk L'Kadsho, Tziva, again, Shenizkar. I have trouble with that word Nizkar. I think it should be Shenazkir. I don't know. Anyway, Shenazkir is Yom HaShabbos, B'Kodshenu Oso, as we sanctify it, meaning the Shabbos. And then the Ramban says, V'kach Omru b'Mechilta. Since we started in the Mechilta, I'll tell you a little bit more about the Mechilta. L'kadsho kadsheu b'bracha. So the method which we employ, the goal of which is to sanctify the Shabbos, is bracha. And right here, I have to tell you, it's very difficult. I don't understand why the method of Kiddush is bracha. Now, why don't we just declare today is Shabbos? Heint is Shabbos. It's sanctified as Shabbos. Just that would be enough. But no, the Mechilta says you need a bracha. I don't know why. The Ramban doesn't tell us why. In the next paragraph in the Ramban has said maybe we should have a mitzvah of Kiddush by Yom. And there is a Gemara Pesachim that seems to indicate that Zochar Yom HaShabbos L'Kadsho is the word Yom is a basis for the conclusion that we have an obligation to be Mekadosh the Yom. Says the Ramban, ridiculous. It can't be so. Anything that needs Kiddush, you are Mekadosh it at the beginning, and the Kedusha continues on its own. There's no point to doing another Maisa Kiddush on Yom Shabbos. You've already done the Kiddush B'Knisas HaShabbos. Now, what I don't know is, does the Ramban now backtrack even on the beginning of the pasuk of Zachar Yom HaShabbos? Or maybe now the Ramban in his Avol accepts the Pshat in Zachar Yom, and he just rejects or replaces the Pshat in L'Kadsho. Let me repeat that. Yesh Listapik. I don't know. Is the Ramban now just changing one important piece of the puzzle, but one piece of the puzzle, and that's L'Kadsho, but he accepts the original first round Pshat of Zohar? Or is the Ramban changing in his new Pshat, Avol Rabosenu, etc., even his understanding of Zohar? let's analyze the two possibilities. I'll start with the last possibility. We'll go backwards. The Ramban is now reinterpreting the entire pasuk. And he's saying that Zachar es Yom HaShabbos means on Friday night recite a bracha, Lekadsho. So the Lekadsho is really the goal, the purpose, or shall we say it in brisket terminology, the kiyum of the mitzvah of Zechira. So the mitzvah of Zechira is recite a bracha. The purpose, so that's the Maisa mitzvah. The goal or the tachlis of that Maisa Zechira is Lekadsho, to sanctify the Shabbos. And if that be the case, then the Ramban is, in his second pshat Choser Bo, he's rejecting his first pshat not only with regard to Lekadsho, but even with regard to Zachar. And the advantage I find in this pshat is that now the Ramban has again one flowing mitzvah of Zachar Yom Shabbos Lekadsho, meaning on Friday night, you do the bracha, you cite the bracha, and you makadosh the yom. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that the Ramban is totally focused here in his second shot on the word lekadsho. He's not touching the beginning of the pasuk Zachar Yom, and we have to accept the first pshat even after the avol, namely that the entire week long I'm aware of the Shabbos without forgetting it, understanding its uniqueness, and designating everything for Shabbos. And the Ramban now is only changing our understanding of Lekadsho. And Lekadsho means to Kiddush, a Maisa Kiddush, to sanctify the day itself through a bracha. If you accept that pshat, then you can anticipate that according to the Ramban, there are two different mitzvos that are written in this pasuk. One is Zachar es Yom HaShabbos, which means the whole week long I'm aware of the Shabbos. I designate every good thing that comes my way for Shabbos. And Lekadsho means on Friday night I have a new mitzvah to sanctify the Shabbos. And a comparison to Kiddush HaYovel. And you and I know that at the time of the Ramban and the Rambam, it was very in style, in vogue to count the mitzvahs, to come up to the number 613. So the nafkamina, so to speak, don't take me literally, between the two pshatim that I have in this Ramban is how many mitzvahs are written in, how many mitzvahs should be counted in Taryag in this pasuk Zachar Yom Shabbos Lekadsho. If the Ramban, in his second pshat Avol, is rejecting the original understanding of Zachar Yom HaShabbos, then it could be there's only one mitzvah here. And that mitzvah is to recite a bracha on Friday night, and thereby through the method, via the bracha, to be mekadosh the Shabbos. And that's one integrated whole, one mitzvah, indivisible, on Friday night. According to my second pshat in the Ramban is still holding on to his original understanding of the mitzvah of Zachar. He's only changing the mitzvah of Lekadsho, and now he's generating two different mitzvahs from the same pasuk. One mitzvah is to remember the Shabbos the whole week long, and the other mitzvah is to sanctify the Shabbos on Friday night. And they're two separate mitzvahs, fundamentally different one from the other. Comments before I read the next paragraph in the Ramban, because that's going to be the clincher.
Could you possibly synthesize the two together to say that you still have a mitzvah of Zohar the whole week. The focus of that Zohar is the Kiddush, like Lakachai on Friday night. But the whole week, if you think about Shabbos, you remember Shabbos, you're Mekayim that mitzvah, which the focal point of it is the Kiddush of Shabbos. So now the Zohar is Shabbos all week. Lakachai, what's your focus? Where do you put a bracha to that mitzvah? Where do you put a focus to that mitzvah? Is Friday night when you make Kiddush.
Very good. So what Bobby is saying, I'm going to say it in my language, maybe it'll resonate, that we could say that the Ramban accepts, even after the Aval, his original pshat in Zechira, remembering the Shabbos the whole week long, but yet it's not two distinct mitzvahs. Because by remembering the Shabbos during the week, I already start a process of Kiddush HaShabbos, which means that Kiddush HaShabbos, which Ramban holds is written in the word Lakadsho as an obligation to sanctify the Shabbos, begins at the beginning of the week by remembering the Shabbos constantly, perpetually, and designate everything for Shabbos. That already is part of the Kiddush. And the clincher, the apex, is the bracha that we recite on Friday night, which is the clincher that generates the Kiddush Shabbos, but I've already begun that process. And therefore we can integrate the two into one without having to reject the original pshat in Zohar. So we're going to have Zechira and bracha b'Torah's Kiddush, but even the Zechira, which is generated and obligated by Zohar, which encompasses the whole week, is for the purpose, is another segment or link in a process that terminates with the bracha of Kiddush on Friday night as a Maisa Kiddush. But the entire week long, I'm involved in Kiddush.
Question.
Is that more or less, Bobby, what you meant? Just maybe I said it a little better than you. No, I don't know. What do you say, John?
Go ahead, Gershon first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to say, very different from this is Kiddush Levana. I assume Ya'alev Yavo on Rosh Chodesh is your Kiddush for Rosh Chodesh, if you want to call it that. But then later on, Motzei Shabbos or whatever, you're going to say Kiddush Levana. They call it a Kiddush, but you've already done Ya'alev Yavo on Rosh Chodesh itself.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Meaning that, let's say Rosh Chodesh was on a Sunday, and I recited Ya'alev Yavo, and I declared the day as Rosh Chodesh, and now, maybe a week later, I go out and I see the Levana, and I'm a Kaddish Levana. That's like, what do you want to call it? The Gemar Kiddush, the culmination of the Kiddush, maybe.
I mean, it's the term,
The problem with that, Gershon, is that how can you culminate the Kiddush when it's already the 10th of the month or the 7th of the month, whatever day it is? You know what I mean?
Don't know. I don't understand.
Here I have a timeline in which I start on Sunday and I culminate on Shabbos with the bracha of Kiddush. So you could say that what came before, but that's why in your model of Rosh Chodesh, the problem would be, can I do a Maisa Kiddush on the Levana when it's already the 7th day of the month, or whatever day it is? I'm just throwing out a number. That's a little problematic. But again, the main thrust of this Ramban is that we are Mekadesh the Shabbos. Again, I don't know exactly what that means, but I do know one thing, that the Ramban in equating it with Kiddush HaYovel is telling me that Kiddush HaYovel is also a very strange phenomenon. Well, what do you mean Ton Kiddush? Why Ton Kiddush? It needs Kiddush? It's the 50th year. It's got to be Yovel. The Yovel, by definition, is the 50th year. Whether you like it or you're not, you can jump on your head and do somersaults in the air. It's Yovel, and that's it. But yet, paradoxically, the Torah requires, in this case, Bezdin, to go ahead and do an act of Kiddush and proclaim the 50th year as Yovel.
What is the lashon of the pasuk for Bayovel? Like in other words,
Again, the Ramban quotes V'kidashtem. I'll read it out loud.
V'kidashtem eshnas hachamishim.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'll just read it again just to be sure. V'kidashtem eshnas hachamishim shana.
I was thinking. It says
You can look up that pasuk if you like. Vayikra Chaf Hei pasuk Gimel.
Is there actually a
Wait, Joe wanted to say something.
No, it's okay. Bobby's always talking over me. That's no problem.
Oh,
No, but I just
okay.
wanted to.
Let's leave out the Torontonian politics. I had that for 2 years.
I just
They
wanted.
accused me of all sorts of things over there, you know.
Really?
I just wanted to point
Some
out
of them
that
were true, by the way. But anyway,
I just wanted to say that it doesn't work with the Kiddush that I'm just asking. It doesn't necessarily work with the Kiddush that we make on Friday night, because the Kiddush, if I understand the Kiddush correctly, we don't say that we're Mekadosh. We say that Hashem is Mekadosh the Shabbos. That we have no, we don't have any role in this.
so
Just to
Joe,
acknowledge it.
let me tell you this. I've been thinking a lot about your question, a lot. And let me start backwards. What does the Ramban mean that we're Mekadosh the Shabbos? So even though I told you at the beginning of Shir that we're not going to get into philosophy, but I think we have no choice. And in the few minutes that we have before you have to run, I want to give you a little taste of that part of the Ramban, not here, but it's at the beginning of Bereshis with the story of creation, which the Art Scroll doesn't bother translating. And I think I've told you this many times. I'm a big fan of the Art Scroll on Ramban. They did a wonderful job, but I have one pet peeve. And I understand their point of view. I'm not judging them. They skip some of the most important Rambans al Torah, probably 30% of the Rambans al Torah. Because as soon as they see the Ramban says the word sod, we're out of here. That's Art Scroll, beyond the scope of this elucidation, which I've seen 1,000 times. But in any event, getting back to my point, the Ramban on the pasuk that says "Vayikadish also vayvarech," I should open up a chumash here if somebody could do that for me. Vayvarech es yom hashvi vayikadish also, whatever it says over there at the beginning of Bereshis, which we recite in Kiddush. Says the Ramban, it begins with bracha and ends with Kiddush, and he goes into a mystical understanding. Now, I don't know if I ever said this to you before, and I might be branded as who knows what for saying this, but I honestly believe that there's a mistake in the Siddur that we've been reciting for the last thousands of years, and it's a mistake. And we, in the what's called the Bracha Me'ed Sheva, meaning the Chazaras HaShatz on Friday night, which is the only Ma'ariv of the week that has a Chazaras HaShatz, it says there, if you open it up, it says Me'ein HaBrachot. Does that ring a bell to you? If you have a siddur, open up. It's a mistake. I can prove it to you from the Ramban. It should not be Me'ein HaBrachot, but Ma'ayan HaBrachot. You just changed the vocalization. Because the Ramban says that the bracha that God bestowed on the Shabbos is Ma'ayan HaBrachot. The word Ma'ayan, as opposed to Me'en, Ma'ayan is a spring that produces its own water, so to speak. The water springs forth. And the Ramban identifies Shabbos as the Ma'ayan HaBrachot. Now, Shabbos is up Lamala in Himmel, up in the heavens. But it is the source of all brachos. And that's what it means that God blessed the Shabbos. And that's Vayikadesh also. The Kiddush of Shabbos is when the Ma'ayan HaBrachot springs forward, flows its brachos into the Shabbos down on earth. So we've got the bracha, the Ma'ayan HaBrachot up in Shamayim, which in the world of Hasidus, I think is called Shefa, if you're familiar with that term. And we have to bring down that Shefa, milamalo lamata. And that's what Shabbos accomplishes. So the power of Shabbos, the Kiddush of Shabbos, is to take the Ma'ayan HaBrachot from up in the heavens and bring it down so that it flows down on earth. Obviously, Hashem does that. But according to the Ramban, I believe, not in Bereshis, but the Ramban here that we're learning now, we have to do a mirror image in order to achieve bringing down the Ma'ayan HaBrachot, that Shefa milamal lamata. And that's going to be done through a bracha, just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu blesses the Shabbos. We're going to bless the Shabbos by declaring that the Shabbos is Ma'ayan HaBrachot, and we will now sanctify the Shabbos with the power to bring down that Shefa of Brachot down to our earth, milamala lemata. And the Ramban holds that there's like a mirror image here between what the Almighty is doing with Shabbos, namely blessing the Shabbos as the Ma'ayan HaBrachot and then sanctifying the Shabbos. We do it in our own way by reciting a bracha in which we declare that Shabbos is the Ma'ayan HaBrachot, and we thusly bring down that Shefa of Ma'ayan HaBrachot such that now we sanctify the Shabbos. There's a parallel two tracks. Now, the question is, well, guess what? As Joe said before, I looked in Kiddush and I don't see anything about Ma'ayan HaBrachot. But there is Ma'ayan HaBrachot in the Kiddush recited by the Shliach Tzibur, which could be interpreted in two ways, and they might both be correct. Number one, there's got to be a bracha and a Kiddush that's accomplished by the Tzibur, as a Tzibur, and that's why the Shliach Tzibur representing the Tzibur will achieve that goal. And that makes the parallel of the Ramban to Yovel very, very sharp, because who's Mekadesh the Yovel? It's Bezdin representing the Tzibur. And there's going to be a process of sanctifying the Shabbos through the mouth or the agency of the Shliach Tzibur. But what we do have in Kiddush, for our Kiddush, is to mimic HaKadosh Baruch Hu, quoting the Pasuk, Vayevarech Elokim es Yom HaShvi Vayikadesh Oso, in which we're not only declaring that the Almighty blesses the Shabbos and therefore thereby sanctifies it, but we are doing the same thing. So although we don't say explicitly we are now sanctifying the Shabbos, but by reiterating the fact that Hashem is sanctifying the Shabbos, by being Mevarech the Shabbos, we too are following suit. And so when we recite a bracha, Baruch Hashem Mekadesh HaShabbos, that bracha means that we are sanctifying the Shabbos like the Ribbon Shalom is sanctifying the Shabbos. Now, all this is very, very, how should I say, tenuous. I see Chaim joined us. I just want to tell Chaim that I tried to call him before to tell him that in Toronto they changed the clock. Hi, Chaim. I don't know if you saw, I tried to call you. Maybe I don't have your right number. I'm not sure. So again, I apologize. This was very, kind of surprising to me. All of a sudden, I get a call from Joe Zeifman that, we're waiting for you. But I had gotten a notice from somebody else in the group, I won't mention his name, that I should be ready at 3:15. So this has happened in the past. At least we're being consistent. That's one thing.
Well, it's recorded, so you can listen.
All right. Any comments on what I've said so far? I don't know, Joe,
Yeah, I think it's fantastic, but I think
somebody has to put the background on silent. Yeah. Go ahead.
It's actually in the Kiddush. If
Okay,
you read
what
the
did you
Kiddush,
find in the Kiddush?
Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kiddishanu b'mitzvos v'ratzav banu. He wanted us to b'Shabbos kosher b'avros and hinchilanu. He gave it to us as a Yerusha, Zikaron L'Maseh Reishis. In other words, the idea of being Mekadesh to Shabbos in Chilonu.
But I understood, Bobby, before your insight, Bobby Shlita. I understood that Vinchilanu means that, the Kedusha Shabbos comes from up there down to us, and we thank Hashem for the Kedusha Shabbos. But you're saying no, that we're Vinchilanu means that we are being Mekadesh the Shabbos.
No, not that. But in other words, that Shabbos kosher b'avo v'ratzain in Chilonu. Yes, he's bequeathing it to us to deal with it, to be Mekadesh.
No, but do you agree with me, Bobby, that we're still sort of jumping a gap over here? Do you follow what I mean? Like they say in Britain, in Britain you go on a train and they say, mind the gap. There is still a gap over here.
Yeah, ki hu yom techila l'mikrei kodesh. In other words, it's all
somehow our proclaiming the Kedusha Shabbos itself is an act of Kiddush. Very good.
I'm not saying what I'm saying is that it's not the same kind of Kiddush as we talk about with Yontiv, where it's in our power to make the holiness of the Yontiv. The holiness of the Shabbos is there. We don't do anything. But your vort, which is beautiful, of bringing it down to the world to say, yeah, the Kiddush is there all along. My Sabracious is my Sabracious, and it doesn't need us to be Mekadesh it. But Hashem asked us to help to be Mekadesh it in this world, to bring down that sanctity, and it literally is saying that in the Kiddush.
Okay, let me ask you, Rabbosai, do you have, I don't know what time davening is. Are you before davening or after davening? I forget. After. So can I ask you for 5 more minutes? Because I want to read the next line in the Ramban. This is the punchline of the whole shir. The Ramban says the following. Umisham tilmad.
They're going to fire Joe at Harvey's. That's the only thing that's going to happen. He's going to get fired, but otherwise.
Yeah, he'll get fired. I'd like to see who has the chutzpah to fire him. Okay. Just send him to me, Joe. I'll deal with him. Okay. I'll tell him I knew your father. Umisham tilmad.
It'll be my son.
Oh, okay. I knew your father and your grandfather. Okay. Misham tilmad. What's Misham in the Ramban? I believe that the Ramban's Misham here is referring to the Mechilta of Lekadsho, that we have to be Mekadesh Shabbos, tilmad. Sham mitzvah zos lamda mimilas lekadsho, that this mitzvah should be derived from the word lekadsho, that we sanctify the Shabbos. Avol zacher es yom HaShabbos. Now the Ramban is addressing our suffix that we had before. Avol zacher es yom HaShabbos, meaning what is that mitzvah? Because again, the Mechilta is putting the Maisa Kiddush of Shabbos is licked. It's inherent in the word lekadsho. Avol zacher es yom HaShabbos mitzvah lezachro tamid b'chol yom k'moshe pirashnu. Which means that the Ramban, even after the Avol, in his second round, does not upset or change the Zachar Yom HaShabbos. It's L'Zachar Tamid, Zechira Tamid, put away the good food, the good kalim, and everything else for Shabbos. And then I asked you, well, if that be the case, there are 2 fundamentally different mitzvahs here. One is to remember the Shabbos, and the other is to proclaim the Shabbos and its sanctity. Should be counted as two mitzvahs. Says the Ramban, El Shekol Mitzvahs Hazchira. I'll have to read this 10 times. Shekol Mitzvahs Hazchira B'minyan Echad B'cheshben Ramach Mitzvahs. B'minyan Echad. In other words, the Ramban was aware of our problem. Because if you're going back to the old pshat, the original pshat in Zohar that we have to Zechiras HaShabbos, then we have here two mitzvahs that are written in the same pasuk. One is Zechiras HaShabbos the whole week long, and the other is Kiddush HaShabbos on Friday night. That should be counted as two. And the Ramban is very sensitive, very aware of that problem. But he says, "Nein, kol mitzvahs hazchira," whatever that means. The minyan echad b'cheshben ramach mitzvahs haseh.
That because he's saying that the zechira, the kiddush is part of the zechira,
Correct.
like you said before. Right?
I want to just add one point, which again, it's not just to maybe hopefully enhance what we've been saying, is that the Kiddush is a result of Kabbalas Shabbos, meaning God says, here's the Shabbos, but that's not enough. God says, you know what? It's like, I'm learning now the halachas of B'shalach Manos. What happens if the recipient says thanks, but no thanks? You know, are you makayim the mitzvah if he rejects it? A big, hullabaloo in the poskin. So God says, here, I'm going to give you the Shabbos, but you have to accept the Shabbos. The ball is in your court, or the puck is in your court. You have to decide whether or not you want to accept my gift. That's Kabbalas HaShabbos. So the Ramban says that the Kabbalas HaShabbos itself is a Maisa Kiddush. Again, the Kiddush is there, but Hashem says you want to tap into it, and by tapping into it, you are Makadosh the Shabbos. That depends upon your Kabbalah. Says the Ramban, Kol mitzvahs haschira mitzvah achas. Why? Because when I designate this beautiful kugel or cholet or whatever I have for Shabbos, I am basically accepting the Shabbos. I'm embracing the Shabbos. I'm longing for the Shabbos. I'm incorporating all my actions during the week into Shabbos, and the culmination will be the Kabbalas HaShabbos through the bracha of Kiddush on Friday night. But it's all one continuous process of Kabbalas HaShabbos. So I don't think this contradicts what Bobby was saying. I think hopefully it maybe even adds another perspective and enhances our understanding. But the bottom line is, the Ramban is of the opinion that Zachas Yom HaShabbos L'Kadsho, even after he redefines the mitzvah of L'Kadsho, is all one indivisible mitzvah. Okay, then?
I just wanted to add.
So let me take this opportunity to wish you a Freilich and Purim. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Real important.
Freilich and Purim.